Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Career Coaching with Jessness. On this show, we talk about career growth, self discovery, and finding out not just what we're here to do for work, but also discovering who we are. Sometimes the biggest lessons about who we are come outside of work, through life changes, loss, and the moments that shake us up and ask us to rebuild. Today's episode is a special one. I am joined by two incredible women, Patty and Samantha, where together we all explore how loss shaped our sense of identity, our trust in the unknown, and moving through the in-between that comes with hard times. The cool part about this conversation is that we each come at it from a different perspective. We're each in a different decade of life and find commonality despite our age differences. So in this episode, we've got 30 something, 50 something, and 70 something all in the house representing. Each of us bonded over writing when we met at the San Jose Women's Club event in Silicon Valley. We were each there featuring our books, and we were all on a panel about women who have written memoirs. Patty has written a book called Beyond Widow, where she writes about the life after her husband's passing. Samantha wrote a book called Giving Up the Ghost, about the passing of her mother from suicide, that was awarded Best Memoir at the 2025 San Francisco Book Festival. And I've written a book called Thank You for Dumping Me, a book about my blindsided breakup turned personal growth opportunity, learning to love yourself after heartache, and the challenging transitions that help us get to know ourselves more deeply. Attending events like the San Jose Women's Club book event and being open and actively connecting with people outside of our immediate work world through conversations like this, through storytelling, through genuine curiosity, it keeps us fresh. It keeps us inspired and open to learnings and opportunities that we can't always see from our desks. I'm super excited to share this with you today. I'm curious, how has a loss in your life shaped your identity? DM me on Instagram at HelloJessness. And without further ado, let's dive in to this episode. 3 decades, 3 voices, loss, discovery, and writing our way forward. Enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome in. Today we have a special episode for you. We have got 3 decades represented here, 3 voices, and we're going to be talking about loss, discovery, and writing our way forward. And I'm super excited to dive in. Let's do some little intros here. Would love for everyone to share your name, your decade you're representing here, the book you've written, and then just to mix things up a little bit, let's go ahead and have you share one word to describe the decade that you're in now. So, Samantha, do you want to start?
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Samantha Rose, and the decade I am in is midlife, early 50s. And the book I've written is called Giving Up the Ghost, A Daughter's Memoir. And I love this question about the one word. I had to think about it ahead of time. Revealing.
Love that. Thanks. Patty, welcome.
Patty McGuigan here. I'm in my 70s, but I swirl and very often color outside the lines, so you're not going to get my age. And the book that I've written is called Beyond Widow. And I found this a very challenging question. And surprisingly, I came up with exhilarating. And that is that'd be a surprise for everybody, but it is exhilarating.
I love that. So excited to be here with both of you. I'm Jessica Smith and the author of Thank You for Dumping Me. And I'm in my 30s. And I think, so far, this decade really feels like one long initiation into kind of self-trust and a creative rebirth. So I'm gonna land on the word for this decade being becoming. I think becoming, and I think you'll probably find there's some through lines between all of our stories around that too in today's episode. So let's talk a little bit. One of the things that we all bonded over when we met recently was, one, of course, that we're writers, but we've all gone through big life changes. and transitions. And so, I want us to all share a little bit. We're coming at loss and transition from a couple different lenses, not only through decades, but through different flavors of life. And so, me with writing the book about a big breakup, Patty, becoming a widow and losing a husband, and then Samantha losing your mother, and your book being about that. So let's talk a little bit about that. Patty, how did losing your husband shift your identity?
Surprisingly, because if you met me, you would think I was the most independent, self-starting, aggressive feminist that landed on the planet. And yet I had never lived alone. I had never lived alone. So here I was in my mid 70s, all of a sudden, all alone. No kids, no, my parents were gone, my husband was gone, and it was a huge, big hole there. And I just felt like I looked at it through another way, and it took me a while, but I remember where I was standing in the living room when I said, okay, this is it. Mary Oliver what are you going to do with this wild, wonderful life? I love Mary Oliver. And I thought, this is yours, McGuigan. You don't report to anybody anymore. And I'd gotten this card when died that said, don't blame me. He left me unsupervised. And so I use that a lot. Listen, I get to do whatever I want. I'm unsupervised. And so it really allowed me to try and fail and try again and just say yes. It's a major theme. I think everyone, as they move forward, just say yes in every decade, because you can always get out of something. But I'll give you an example. In the coffee shop, I met this 86-year-old woman. She was taking a class, a graphics class at the Palo Alto Art Center. I said, "Oh, that sounds interesting." Now, I thought, and I'm not naive, I thought graphic meant porno. You know, don't watch it, Patty. It's a little graphic, this movie. Don't watch it. So I get in this class, and it's like the brilliant, Statue of Liberty. Everybody's coming in. They all speak different languages. They're from Singapore and Japan and Africa. Young, brilliant people, 11 of us, and they can all draw. And I sketch, but I am not a comic sketcher. And I didn't even realize what it all was until we were halfway through the class. And then I had to kind of live in the boat that I had built. And and I said, McGuigan, you signed up for this. You're going to do it. And so I did all 12 classes, and I made the worst graphic, and she made them into books just to really horrify you and give you but I met some really interesting people, and I got a great idea for my children's book, to move forward. And this is a graphic novel rather than a novel. I'm not going to do the graphics. So out of it, but it was humiliating. It was embarrassing. I knew I was the worst one in the class. I was the oldest one in the class, and I felt they probably thought I had been kicked out of the old age home on Tuesday nights, and this is where I landed. But it was really it was really interesting. It was kind of fun. When you're bad and you're really bad, you just get used to it, and I would go 3 classes down and 9 to go, 7 and I loved what everybody else was doing. And I got the idea of writing about my bicycle. And one kid had taken the bicycle and turned it into gave it a human voice. And that's going to be fun for me. So that's what I tell everybody about taking something and, what do they say? Taking lemons and making lemonade out of it.
It opened up a world of newness and
Yes.
recreation and exploration, and sounds like you totally embraced it. I love that. Just love that. Samantha, what about you? So tell us, you lost your mother, unfortunately, and how did that influence and shift your identity?
Well, losing my mother the year before I turned 50, so it was going to be a big shift and a big new decade anyway. But because she died, right before, I felt very existential. I just became kind of hyper aware of my age and my role in the world. And I realized I was the matriarch now. So
Hmm.
I no longer felt like the kid, even though many would argue that at 50 you clearly are no longer the kid. But I just had this realization that, at least for me, that until we lose our parents, um, we don't really have to grow up. I mean, we grow up, of course, but there's this sense that now there's no one above us, at least within our own families, that we are now at the top. And so I felt that pretty deeply, and I felt a real sense of responsibility with that.
Yeah, totally. That makes total sense. Um, I think for me, when I think of the breakup and it happening and how it shifted my identity, it kind of brought to light a lot of the ways that I was just performing as I'm okay, I'm fine, all is well. It kind of revealed the cracks in the wall, if you will, of where I was just achieving to cover up parts of me or wanting to be the helper or over identifying with being the person who had it all. And so it made me face all of those ways that I was outsourcing for love, essentially. And I realized too, I've always been a relationship person my whole life. I've always had a boyfriend from a young age. And so I think I also built over time this self-worth around being chosen. And so for the first time ever, I really had to choose myself. And I didn't know how to do that or what that meant. And so it shifted my identity and forced me to really look at who I truly was without the career title or the outputs or the productivity. And it wasn't easy, but eventually, I think I have this analogy of, I was always looking for the shiny new healing thing, like, oh, maybe it's EMDR, maybe it's plant medicine, maybe it's, sitting with this person or that or meditation. And so behind every door, I was like looking for that shiny thing to solve it. And it was me. And I was like, gosh darn it, it's me again. And so over time, it forced me to start to like myself. And I think eventually turned into, hey, she's not so bad. I actually love her. So
Mhm.
it made some major shifts for me, which I think I'm still integrating today.
I think that's a very strong foundation to go into your 40s. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks. We never stop growing, do we?
Oh, in all ways.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about self-discovery and some of the turning points in our experiences. So we talked, once we all three got together, we talked about how we each of us had a different point where we reframed loss as a point of discovery. And so I would love to hear from both of you. When was the turning point for you? Was there a moment when you realized that you're not just losing something, but becoming something new or gaining something? Samantha, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, not only was I becoming the quote unquote grown up in the room after my mom died, but it forced me to look at our relationship and our roles that we had played to each other. And with her gone, I finally felt like I was able to step into a new role. I write a lot about this in the book that she was this bright light, she was the sun, and I was her moon. And I mean, those roles worked for a long time. I didn't, they were fine with me. And I actually wasn't really aware of them until after I started to really think about it after she passed. And so had lost her, of course, but I started thinking about how I could become my own light source, how I could step out of the shadows and um, be a little bit more of my own sun. So it's that part of discovering myself and challenging myself to step out of a role that had become really comfortable my whole life into a new role was scary, and exciting also.
Sounds like you both had a very yin yang, a symbiotic relationship. That's so cool.
Yeah, it worked very well.
Mm. Well, I see you as a bright sun. So, yes. Patty, what about you?
Well, as I said, I think it happened when I was standing in that living room after Dick had died in August and the pandemic had just started, and I thought, I always say that I live my life by this quote: "An opportunity is an inconvenience well received." And I've gone through the traumas. Not, I don't know, but I've gone through motherhood. I've gone through a divorce and the loss of my parents, and now I'm here. So, I had quivers in my, I had arrows that I knew what to, I had some ways of going at it. And so I thought, so what are you going to do, McGuigan, with this life? And I'm smart. I work hard, but I'm not a huge deep thinker philosophically about where I'm going to be in 20 years. When everyone says you've got to live in the now, I think, where else are you going to live? Of course, you're going to live in the now,
I love that.
So I stood there and I decided that I would write a book. I just stood there right there, and I'd done something for each of three of my four grandchildren, but I hadn't done anything for the little one. And I thought, and I've always shied away from writing a book, but I mean, here you are all by yourself in this big, gorgeous house, no office to go to, and nobody to play with. And so I decided to write a book, and I called the other grandmother because I didn't need more time alone. I did, said, "How'd you like?" And she was in England, and we wrote our first book on email back and forth and Zoomed on Thursday. And it was suddenly I was like this, my God, this is really fun, and I don't really care. And I think you have to do that with books. I don't care if people read it or not. I had a great time. It was a great
Mhm.
exploration for me. And, Marion and I have turned into Leonardo groupies that, we're like a cult, and it's just been a wonderful experience that I wonder why I didn't start it earlier. I didn't, but I did get it started. So it was really a shift for me, it was my side gig that's become now my main gig, and my side gig is my real estate. It's
Mhm.
really interesting. Not that I'm totally away from but I've switched my power force, as it will. What do I think about at night before I go to bed? What am I going to do with this? So it's a whole new life, which I think is really interesting when you hit these life changes,
Mhm.
you
Yes.
know?
I resonate with that so much because for me the turning point was it was kind of this what I'm picturing as you're describing is kind of this moment of like walking through a portal and I into this new thing, this new environment. And I remember one night when I was journaling and it just kind of dawned on me like what if this pain that I'm experiencing is a portal? What if it's actually happening for me rather than to me? And just that like
What
little download really helped me to kind of reframe it. And that's when my book title transformed from uh there were a lot of iterations, but the first one was, 20 something dumped, which, because I was 29, just going into 30. And then it was breakup suck. But this moment helped it blossom into thank you for dumping me because I started to feel like, wow, these things that I'm learning about myself and these discoveries, this can be an opportunity for my own evolution. So it's very cool to have. Sometimes you can't think your way to those downloads. It just dawns on you, and you're like, "Huh, okay," and it just sounds so clear and crisp. And that's how I know at least it's coming from a place bigger than me, you know. So I love that. We talked about navigating the in between. And we all know as humans, there's lots of in betweens, and all of us write about that in our books and navigating that. But I would love to hear, you know, when you were navigating the in between and you were in the trenches of grief and change and trying to figure out what's next, whether it be a drawing sketch class or, navigating what is my new role in my family. What are some things that didn't help at all, or maybe even made it worse?
Hmm. Well, my mother died by suicide.
Mm,
So there were a lot of people who were visibly uncomfortable talking about her death. And so I think the most unhelpful for me was silence, where it was skirting around, talking about the uncomfortable thing, or just dismissing it altogether, or changing the subject, or that wasn't helpful. And I didn't resent those people. I understood why. I didn't know how to talk about it either. And it is uncomfortable. And it was tragic, but it was the thing I wanted to talk about the most, and I wanted to talk about it for a long time. And I was aware that this isn't a subject that people usually want to discuss at every single lunch that they have with you. But I appreciated those who were willing to get into it with me, who were willing to have the uncomfortable conversation or to ask something. There is no right or wrong. I think with grief or with loss, people don't always know what to say. They don't know what card to send. They don't know what sentiment to write. And that's okay. There isn't any right one. I think not acting on it is really the only wrong thing to do. So I would encourage people who have lost somebody to just force the conversation, or if you have a friend or a loved one who's grieving or going through loss, to just be present with them and start a conversation, ask a question. I always liked it when people wanted to talk about my mom, instead of pretending like, oh God, she's not here, well, let's not mention her. No, I liked it when people had stories about her that they wanted to share. So that would be helpful, not helpful.
yeah, yeah, such good points. Patty, what about you? What didn't?
But well, I'll give you an example. In my Beyond Widow book, we had cartoons in it, and most everybody will say sorry for your loss, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I mean, and I even wrote a chapter about it. I thought if someone says that to me again, I'm going to punch him in the nose. But this cartoon says it all. We're so sorry for your loss. You have our deepest sympathies until 5 o'clock when we have dinner reservations. And it's absolutely true. I mean, that's exactly what you are. They're fitting you into a slot. Sorry for your loss, And actually, Tesha, I learned from Tesha when you would say that and say, "What can we do?" And you don't know what somebody can do. And Tesha said, "You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep this offer of yours in my pocket because there's something I'm going to need for you to help me with, and I'm going to pull it out when I need you." And that was a very nice way of thanking him and moving this conversation on. And she actually got her neighbor to take in her trash barrels. I'm so envious of that. As I dragged my trash barrels in on Thursday and back on Friday morning, Tesha, damn it, got someone to do this task for her. So I think, you really do. I agree. You've got to face it. It's a loss. It's irrevocable, you know, um, and just have to be present with it and say, I'm going to find something that entertains us. And the other axiom I like is to fight depression and sadness and everything is activity is the antidote to depression and sadness and whatever else. So, say, let's go for a walk or let's go for a bike ride or let's go to the art museum. They've got a new exhibit out there. Let's wander around downtown and get an ice cream cone. Taking an action item. And if they can't do it that day, find a day that they can do an activity of some sort rather than, you sitting on the couch and her sitting on a chair and thinking sad thoughts and, turn it into an action item. And I think that's healthy for everybody.
That's very much living in the moment too. That's
Right. Oh, I told you I'm an expert at that.
I know it oozes out. I love that. The something that you both said as I was listening, so the irrevocableness of it, and it's that's I think shocking to people. And Samantha, when you'd said, the silence is the worst part. People don't know what to say. We know that. We empathize with that, but not saying anything at all just creates more conflict. And I think it might be just the impermanence of it all. It's hard to grapple with something that is permanent and never coming back. And so it adds this heavier weight, even though it's something so natural that all of us literally have in common. That's always been interesting to me about society. It's something that every single person on the planet has in common, but maybe also it's due to the way that your mom left Earth too. So it's layered, I understand, but yeah. So there's I think people we know are trying their best with it. Some of the things with a breakup, which I guess can feel like a living loss. That person is no longer in your life. They were your friend, your best friend the night before, and then you just don't have them to talk to. So it's a different kind of permanent loss, in a way of no going back. But for me, I think some of the things that made it worse was I'm a very competitive person. And so at first I was trying to kind of win the breakup. I was trying to like turn it into a healing competition against who I'm not really sure, probably just myself. But I 10 out of 10 do not recommend that because it'll just perpetuate the lack of actually healing. So and the other piece that I did a lot in the beginning was I would overanalyze texts and birthday cards and I would go through down the rabbit hole of and I write about this and thank you for dumping me, just all of the kind of just rabbit hole activities that I did to try to make sense of it, to try to make sense of, where's the secret code? Why didn't I see it coming? And try to soothe that embarrassment. But that's I think our brain trying to make sense of something we don't understand yet, or make sense of the unknown, because a lot of it was just unknown. I didn't know what was going to happen next. And we've got a question on the unknown. I'm actually going to go to that one now. How do you, each of you, embrace the unknown? So how do you trust, that the unknown can hold good things too? And tell us about some of the unknowns in your experience that have been positive on your path.
Well, I know Patty's answer. Just embrace it already.
Go on a bike ride.
Yeah, exactly. I told you, I am the perpetual. I think of myself as 12, but it's probably 3. I mean, I have this. How do you embrace the unknown? At my coffee shop, I meet the world. I love this coffee shop. So in there is this kid that's from India that rides this bike, same kind of bike I ride. And he said his boss wants him to get a car. And he says, I live in a box and I work in a box. And now he wants me to travel in a box. I said, I don't want to do that. I want to be outside. I want to breathe the air. I want to see the trees. I want to be outside a box. And I thought, isn't that a great expression? And if you do that, you don't have the walls, you really then see the good side. And I think the unknown becomes exciting and intriguing. And, there's potholes and there's cars that spray mud on you. And, but, and that's true of life. You just have to deal with it. But it becomes, I think, a positive experience to meet a new person and to try a new thing and see where it goes. I'm intrigued. And one of my things, that's why I say exhilarating. I work harder on this thing than I did. Probably worked this hard when I got a divorce. I must say, to change my life in the same way. But this one, I really work at getting relationships in different decades. And it's funny that you named that. And that's why you two are so special. And I talk about this all the time because it's so easy to be surrounded by 30-year-olds that are having babies, to be surrounded in your mid-50s. And we're all talking about, are you perimenopausal or postmenopausal, and have you dated any? Oh my God, that drives you crazy. And in old age, they're all dying. It's the organ recital. I mean, I have 3 people in Stanford now that all have cancer that are going to die, and half a dozen others. And if I just leave myself with my own age group, I'm buying sympathy cards like you buy Christmas cards. I don't want to do that. So I really, really work hard at exposing myself and asking questions, and I call them more than they call me. And I'm great at having people dinner parties. I can do a dinner party in 30 minutes. I mean, I got the caterer, and it's, I can do it like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, which you'll learn about. But the reason for that is that I get an evening that I set up different decades with people from different economic. I mean, I set my own stage, and then I don't have someone come and pouring water wanting to turn the table. And last night they were here till 11:30. They came at 6:30, and we covered all sorts of subjects with those different ages and the different things that they're going through, and how going through those things are different for them than it was for me. I mean, I think every single decade struggles right now with the way the world is on the outside. I mean, the fact that he destroyed the eastern side of the White House, no permit, nothing, just came in. And how far is that bully going to go before somebody stops them? And it was interesting that everybody's how they react to it. Do they get depressed? Do they get, well, I can't do anything about it? It's just interesting. And and it's so much better than saying, how long did the doctor give you before the lights go out? I mean, really, there's only so many flowers and so many lunches you can bring over to people. I go to the hospital and they make them go for a walk, is what I make them do.
I wouldn't doubt it. So it sounds like then one of the ways you embrace the unknown is just the in embracing a variety of perspectives, and through those
Right.
variety of perspectives there's possibility, and you see that as you don't know what's going to come of it, but that merging and bridging of the different decades gives you something. It makes your life vibrant, it makes you interested, and also tapped into what those other
Yeah.
phases of life. I love that. I think that's so cool.
And you can actually look back and say, huh, I had that problem too. And I got through it. Good for me. you
It
know,
helps you notice the progress, because if
yeah,
you're in the
yeah,
thick of it and around the likely, yeah, everyone's in the same boat, it's hard to see how far you've come.
yes,
And yeah,
exactly.
I love that. What comes up for you, Samantha?
Well, I love that too, and I like the idea of having friends on both sides. So I have a best friend that's 10 years younger than me, and then I have a good friend that's 10 years older.
Perfect.
And that I hadn't thought of it the way you said it, Patty, but I think that is important. Um, I mean, after losing my mom in the way I did, I got to be honest, I struggled with the unknown because that was such a big unknown and such a surprise, and I did not want any more of them. So I was, I spent a good chunk of time really trying to embrace control. And we all know that that's sort of,
I
it's
was
a,
going to say, how'd you do with that one?
I didn't do so well. I mean, I did well for a while, but then, things happen and you realize you're not in control.
Yeah.
Um, so what I've enjoyed actually since writing the book, and putting it out there, which was a form of trust. So
Mm.
writing about something so intimate and vulnerable, and I wanted to do it and I was compelled to do it. But then once you realize, oh my goodness, people are going to read this, you want them to, of course, right? But you don't know how it's going to land. You don't know who's going to read it. And that's a big unknown. But since I've done that, I've met some amazing people, you two included. And I, connection points that I wouldn't have seen coming they continue to surprise me. The people I've met, in the opportunities and the doors that have opened and others that have shut. I would not have been able to predict. And so I am less controlling, not totally, not totally free of control. But I'm trusting in not knowing, and that a lot of times that's where the most exciting things happen.
Oh my gosh, 100%. I'm nodding so much right now because when I was reflecting on this piece, the control came up for me too. And I also resonate with just the nakedness that happens when you publish parts of your journal for all to see. And as Patty was saying earlier, you don't write a book thinking, with the focus of who's going to read it, who's going to like it, or else you'll never get through the writing of it. We all know that. But the vulnerability that it takes and trusting that I don't know how the words are going to be received and I'm putting this out here. Um, so yeah, I totally resonate with all of that. The trusting the unknown for me, I think is going to be a lifelong lesson and something that I experience through lived experience over and over and over again. Learning that every time that I stop gripping so much or like trying to make something happen with force or effort or pushing, because that's kind of how I was raised and what I was kind of modeled is, things have to be hard and you jump through hoops and you earn them. And if you don't work hard, you don't get it. Instead of leaning into that, practicing and seeing it as a kind of a life experiment around when I do soften and release control and lean into more of that surrender, where I'm kind of dancing with the universe, like I'm amazed at the things that come through. And what just a little bit of patience can do for me. I wish that came in a pill. I really do. But like you said, Samantha, the opportunities that come through or the connections that come through, or the opportunity that gets emailed that wasn't even on my radar. And so I'm greeted with these little treats from the universe, these little synchronicities of things lining up that I couldn't have thought myself there or created a perfect plan and crossed it off the list. And I think those are the parts of life that make it fun and exciting. If I woke up every single day and knew exactly how the day would go, which is comforting to some extent, but in the grand scheme of life, it would be really boring. It would be really dull. So I think for me, it's trusting the unknown, practicing with releasing the grip, and through that, being gifted with, little reminders that it's safe, even if you don't know what's around the corner. That's really how my book came to be is, throughout the whole book. Thank you for dumping me. It's about me going through a journey of, the rug being pulled out from under me and then not knowing anything that was next and the journey of what that looked like. And that's how the book is now here. And so I think it is a reminder too. I should probably reread it from time to time just to remind myself, because you can write a book on the unknown and still be grappling with it too. But that's part of my
That's a
lesson.
great title. It is
Thank you
just a
so much.
great title.
I'm glad it evolved because the first couple iterations,
Yeah, when
not
you said
great.
the first couple ones, I know that's a great title.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, okay. So let's go back to the decade thing. I think we all know there's beauty in having friends in all decades and um, experiencing different perspectives and having that support system. But how do you feel that in relation to your loss of your mom and your husband, how did being in the decade that you're in shape your experience of that loss? Samantha.
Let's see. Well, as I said, I was turning 50. I think that I had some maturity at that age that maybe I wouldn't have had at a younger age to recognize how important it would be to really lean into grieving.
Mm,
And I write a lot about grief in the book, and I'd never experienced grief. I'd experienced loss and heartache and heartbreak, but not like deep, deep grief. And I decided to lean into it and just really give myself over to it. And I write about grief being impatient. You can avoid it, but at some point, it's going to wait you out. It is going to wait and wait and wait, and it wants attention. It wants to engage with you. And so I did. And I was able to do that maybe because I was older and would work for myself, and professionally, I could take time in pockets of time in my schedule to grieve, to sit and reflect and eventually write about it. And the writing process became the most helpful in terms of healing. I was able to really channel a lot of it onto the page, and I realized as soon as I would do that, I would write a certain scene or something that had happened that had been really nagging me in my head and feeling so painful, and I would write it out, and it would lift. It really would lift off of my heart. It sort of exercised itself out of my system. And I thought that was so cool. Of course, there's research that tells us that that's not just magic, that there really is something to writing and for processing and healing. And so I think the younger version of me might not have done that, might have been a little less patient and may have avoided the process and stayed busy to, in a way, not to face it. But the older, a little more wiser me decided to brave the pain, and it was probably one of the best decisions I made. Not easy. But I think I've talked to family members who experienced the same loss, who didn't spend as much time leaning into grief, and they self-admit that they're kind of still back at ground zero with it. So I pat myself on the back for doing the hard work.
Absolutely. It does. I mean, like you said, it takes such bravery to go and sit with it because in a lot of ways it can feel like Pandora's box and you're just going to get eaten up, swallowed whole with it. But being able to carve out some time to really feel, that's inspiring. So that's really awesome. Patty, what about you?
And it's interesting. When I lost my mom, my brother and I we happened to be blessed with these wonderful parents, who thought we were gifts from God, and were this wild, crazy Irish children. They didn't see us as that way. They just saw us as gifts from God. And when in the pandemic, my brother and I wrote a book about my mom, and my mother was very lucky. I mean, she won in anything she ever did, the horse races, bridge, bingo, make any difference. She always won. And so we titled it Lady Luck, but our subtitle was the secret. An ordinary life lived an extraordinary way. And so we got all these old pictures, and together the two of us wrote this book about her. And it was so wonderful for the two of us to revisit all of these phases of our mother, many of them when we weren't even there. We watched them fall in love, and they got married in the war, and she became I mean, it was really a wonderful, wonderful experience, and I didn't realize that. I must say, the loss in my divorce, I'm quite ashamed of my behavior the year that I got a divorce, because I was really surprised by it. Dick's death. We had lived on the edge of the knife for 23 years, with keeping him alive and vertical and healthy and happy and all of that. So by the time we knew the gig was up after 23 years. We'd gotten as much out of that. I mean, and I can honestly say at the age of 74, he led a full, happy, colorful life. And he told me that all the time. He says, this has been a journey of a lifetime. I know no one gets a partner like you, So there wasn't that ugliness that followed my divorce, where I basically, as an Irishman, was quite willing to kill my husband. I was just lucky I didn't have the money, because I probably would have killed him, without question. There was, again, it was hard speaking to you, that he left, you felt like such a failure. I didn't feel like a failure when I lost Dick. I knew I had done a really good job of keeping him happy, involved, vertical, you know. Um, and I learned that from my mom. My mom did the same thing with my dad. So it wasn't. And in fact, if you come to my house, when you come to my house, Dick bought this house. I took my mother to Europe on her birthday after my dad died, and I was there 4 days. And my husband called me and said, "Patty Ann, I bought you a house." I said, "What did you mean you bought me a house? I've only been gone 4 days." We were talking about moving in 6 months, but we hadn't looked at houses or anything. I left on a Saturday, and on a Wednesday he had bought a house, and so I always feel that was his gift to me, this house, and everybody else my age and in my state, they're downsizing. Well, I'd have to buy one of those old age homes and empty the whole place out because I've got so much crap. But I have these pictures of him all over in this, and everything here is stuff that he's done. It's his garden, and so, but it doesn't look like I mean, I'm not Miss Havisham where you're walking through a house, but so I don't have that. I've not suffered that. He's even my books that I've written. Anne says, every single one of these is a tribute to Richard in one way or another facet of how he entered your life. And I think that's true. So I don't have, I mean, he's kind of with me all the time. I mean, that may not work for everybody, and it may make me a little, look a little odd, but it works for me. So
Yes.
I'm happy with that. I'm very happy with that.
That's beautiful that, the life that he lived was full and it still
Yeah.
lives on and in the things that you see around and
Yeah. I mean, he went to Michigan State, and his grandson is going to Michigan State, and I went back to visit him, and walking around that campus, I was just all smiles because I had been there so many times with Dick. And what a better gift to give him than the fact that his grandson is walking around in the same school. I mean, it's really, it just brings me great joy. Great joy.
that's cool. That's cool. I think, being in my 30s and having that relationship end suddenly, without my consent.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
I didn't have a say in this. What the heck? I was just eating Thai food on the couch and he came home one day and said, "When I picture my future, you're not in it." I said, "Excuse me? I was just going to ask you if you wanted some pad Thai." So I was completely blindsided and had thought in it, and with him leaving, left this idea of what my life was. I was just there, ready to start. I'm like, all right, we're gonna buy a house, and we're gonna have kids, and we're gonna have a wedding, and this is what you do. You check all these boxes, and you go through this thing. So the being in my 30s and having a lot of early 30s, having a lot of my friends starting to settle down and getting more serious with people, I felt like I had started over. And, like when you play in the game of life and you have to go back to go, I was like, oh no, I've got to redo all this stuff. So it messed with my identity of myself, I think my timeline and the idea of what I thought my life would be. And I wasn't as established, like with both of you having
Mhm.
years, right? I wasn't as experienced in that, and I don't think I didn't have as big of a breadth of knowledge of like perspective of, hey, this isn't the end of the world. I can write through it, or I can, I've lived all these things. I can invest my time and energy in these other things. It was really like this like, oh, I hit a brick wall. I don't know what's on the other side of it.
Mhm.
This is all I know. So I think as I'm getting older, like the world gets both smaller and bigger, and how you experience it. But yeah.
And I discovered when my husband, because I was married 13 years and he walked out, and I had two kids, and I was struck with such fear of
Mm,
the unknown. How was I going to support these kids? How was I going to give them the life that I had had? And it terrified me for 1 year. It just terrified me. I don't think I slept soundly for a year. It was really terrifying.
Mm,
Now, I don't think he meant to do that, but nonetheless, he was the one that pulled the trigger. And that fear, I had never fantasized that nothing had
mm-hmm.
hit me like that. And it was a big wall, and it was fear. And that's what you were going through, friggin' fear,
Totally.
you know?
Yeah, 100%. Because I think there is something to, if you have a little bit of time to kind of workshop it in your
Yeah,
mind, or at least have thought about it, or,
right.
like you said, like, oh, what would it be like if he wasn't here and I raised these kids by myself? Like, not having to even explore any of that. And it just, it takes you off guard, and yeah, a
Yeah.
total fear spiral.
Yeah, yeah,
Complete.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because we know everybody's going to die, but we don't know everybody's going to have someone walk out on you. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's fear. That is really fear.
It takes extreme trust,
Exactly right.
Yeah.
You know,
And you can't
exactly
control the
right.
other person, right? He's got free will. So he was able to make that decision. And I got to tell you though, I didn't eat Thai food for a long time. I stayed away from that cuisine. I thought maybe it's the Thai food. I'm not going.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
And Samantha, you went through that was a dumb. I remember one time you said, just bring it on. It's all coming my way, Um, that you got like the double barrel shot with your loss of your mother and your husband, no matter what state your marriage was in, and maybe it wasn't going to last. You didn't expect to get that explosion with your mom. And that's hard.
Hmm.
That's
I was
hard.
going through a divorce when she passed, and I'd lost my stepfather 3 months prior, and then we went into pandemic.
Yeah, yeah. You kind of
Yeah.
walk out and say, God, what's going on here? I
Uh-huh.
mean, what did I do wrong?
On good days, I employed what Jessica said earlier. It's like the universe is providing a new door here because everything else is gone.
I
So
know.
uh,
But when you hit those years, the year that he walked out, I was teaching school. They transferred me to Watts, which was 50 miles from my house. My car blew up. I drove my dad's car and I blew it up. And then I was living in California at the time, and the drought was going on, and all of these animals were coming and scraping all my grass. So every morning I got up and the grass was all gone, was all rolled from the gophers. And I actually took a baby gopher, emptied up my trash barrel, and flooded it and drowned the gopher. And I said to myself, where is my life that at 6 in the morning before I'm teaching school or making my kids breakfast, I'm out here drowning gophers, and like he's going to go back. The spirits are going to go back and say, "Don't touch that woman's house. She'll drown you." It was just such a strange year that one thing came right after the other, right after the other. I mean, I was like Fiddler on the Roof. Okay, God, enough. I like to be happy. I'm not happy. It was really a hard year, a very, very difficult year. So accolades to you, because I didn't see many rainbows that year at all. The only good thing is I lost about 25 pounds.
Yeah, yeah, from stress and just
Oh,
not being yourself. Yeah, grief will make you, do things that you don't recognize yourself.
so, yeah,
You don't
no,
recognize yourself. I want
really
to
strips you. It strips you.
It does. Yes, it strips you down and shows you just how resilient you can be.
Yeah, what you can find, you know.
Yeah.
And I think all of us are in such a better place now, really. I mean, our lives should be examples for other women,
Yeah,
you
you've
know.
through hard and they can I think it's helpful to all of us probably have some kind of calling to the reason for writing the book is for that, to show people,
Exactly.
or to at least for our own process to show ourselves first and then decide, oh, okay, well, um, let's turn this into a book, or I've got something here that may help someone else. But first, it always starts with, at least I'll speak for myself, for the writing of the processing of it and all of that. Like Samantha had mentioned, it really does do something. It feels like magic, but It's totally baked in
Yeah.
science and brain. So I want to hear, let's talk a little bit about our books. And let's start with you, Samantha. What do you hope people walk away with when they read your book?
I think ultimately I want to give readers permission to tell their own story. I think we all have a story. We're not all going to write books, but we all have a story. And I hope to give permission. I think sometimes people think that their lives aren't interesting or what they're grappling with is too painful or hard. And I would say, especially when it feels hard and scary, to challenge yourself to speak it out loud or to speak it to other people. I hope it encourages people to ask for help if and when they need it. I certainly learned to do better at that. It is hard, but I have learned that there's always someone there to take your hand or to listen when you ask for help. It's especially hard for women, I know. My mother struggled with it, and I realized in the writing of my book that I also struggle with it. But it's such an important thing to be able to do. So I hope it encourages people to tell their stories, to ask for help, and to believe that there is a rainbow, there is something better on the other side of wherever you are now. And the timeline for getting there is unknown, but there is something on the other side of this.
Love that. What about you, Patty? People
Well,
walking away, what are they?
yeah, well, I wanted to get the book and I want to read. We have these quotes in there because I live my life by quotes. My attention span fits quotes. And if you don't do anything else with this book, the first three sentences: start where you are, use what you have,
Mm,
do what you can.
mm,
And I mean, if you can do that day in and day out, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And I think I call this a dip in book because you don't sit down and read the whole thing. You read a page or two, and it's comfort. It's like chocolate ice cream, and it's a French eclair. It just and the one thing it was mine. We did it with the two of us. We're different ages, both of us widows. Tesha is black. I'm white. We both had children, different ages, but you know, we show people there is a road out there. You've got to pave it. You got to find it, but there is a road out there to a new, different life. Not You don't have to make a comparison. You don't get an award that the old life is bad, the new life is good. No, 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 no. They're different and create your different life. And it's you. What I'm most fascinated with, it's your life. And I say that all the time. You just say yes. Just say yes. You can always figure out how to get, if it isn't, even the graphics class ended. Uh, you know,
yeah.
but, just say yes and keep trying different things, and you will create a new, vibrant, exhilarating life. You really will. That doesn't mean every day is chocolate ice cream, but it means your unknown has lots of good things in store for you, just not, waiting on God's doorstep for him to call you to join the hereafter. Go out. I always say, I'm not going to stand on my husband is gone. I'm not standing on God's doorstep waiting for him to call me. We all have to die. He's going to have to go out and find me because I'll be doing something.
For sure. I hope that when people finish my book, first of all, the book I think feels like me around a campfire, chatting with friends, telling them about a story. So I hope that they feel like they're chatting with a friend, and I hope they get a laugh out of it as well. I've heard that this is feedback I've gotten. But I hope that two things. One, that people read and walk away and have a rebrand on breakups in their head, that it's not some horrible life ending thing, but more so a portal into self-discovery. and in a life course redirect that has an adventure behind it, that you don't know where it's going, but to trust the unfolding of that. And then two, as you can, as you navigate the book and see, I want people to walk away knowing that healing is not linear and it's cyclical and it's messy and there's an in between, and that's so human and normal. And whether you can see it or not, everyone has something that they're dealing with, whether they talk about it or not. And I want people to know that it's not going to last forever. So, all right. What would you pass to your younger self? What wisdom would you pass on to your younger decade if they were standing in front of you today? So, Samantha, what would you say to your younger self?
Probably the same things my mom said to me. Wear your sunscreen. Number one, take care of your back, your spine, and write it down.
I love that. What about you, Patty?
Oh, I don't know. I think I'd say, jump the guardrails. I really would. Don't be afraid. Jump those guardrails,
I love
Um,
that.
being raised an Irish Catholic, which had very strong, straight guidelines of what you were to do with your life that way. I think that's why one of the reasons the divorce was so hard for me, because, the guidelines just crashed down. No one had ever had a divorce in the history of the universe, in the Catholicism. And, I just feel like people should take more they can handle risk, and there's great reward for figuring out risk. And I think young people sometimes are really afraid to do that. They're really, I can't do that. I'm too short. I'm too tall. I don't have enough money. I'm not smart enough. I'm over, you got more reasons than God has, jump the guardrails.
Jump the guardrails and wear your sunscreen doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I
And get on a bike.
and get on a bike. Yeah. I love that. I would want to say to my younger self, don't rush the in between, and and um, and don't rush the point in the story, in the plot, where you're unsure of what's next and the answers don't fit into tight, neat little boxes, because that's where the real magic can happen, and the synchronicities and the fun. Ladies, this was really fun, and I think we got a glimpse into a variety of decades. We're all writers. We love our craft. We love living and experiencing life and writing about it. So I just want to thank you both for being here today. We're going to definitely have where to find you both and where to get your book in the show notes.
I'd just say thanks for having us. And for those listening, enjoy whatever decade you're in.
Yes.
Yeah, find the magic.
This episode is brought to you by My Brain Dates, one-on-one conversations where we figure out your next move together on a variety of topics. You can learn more on my website, justnessrequired.com, under the Work With Me tab.